Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to this week's edition of Bible News Radio, and I want to thank you for joining us because you guys know we have changed the format of the show a little bit over the last couple of years. And today I'm in my living room here, and I have my good buddy Stephen Black with me. He is the executive director of First Stone Ministries, and you guys can check that out. Stephen will give you the website in a little bit, but I want to let you know that part of the reason we're doing this show this week is because we're in the middle of June, and I don't know if you all have noticed, but there's a whole lot of rainbows flying around everywhere because our president and everybody and their grandmother has decided to proclaim this, homosexual pride month, and that's not really what they call it. And I just have to tell you a little story. Some of you might find this interesting. I have a mobile app. It's called Finch, and I'm going to show you this app. It's called Finch, and here it is. This is a little personal development app. It's like a goal setting app. So I use this app. I actually pay for the premium version of it. And what they do in this app is they give you this little finch here that you basically take care of. It helps you to, don't judge, okay? I know you're all judging me right now, but it really does help. Anyway, they have, in order to take care of this finch, they have a store here where you buy stuff. And actually, I kind of think that's a little silly myself, but whatever. But here's the thing that really got me. When June hit, all of a sudden, there is every single gay pride flag in the world. I'm going to read you some of this. They have 13 different flags. They had the Progress Pride flag. They have the Rainbow Pride flag. They have the genderqueer one. They have the pansexual pride flag. They have the polysexual pride flag. They had the intersex pride flag, which is that one. They have the trying on transgender, the transgender pride flag, the gender fluid pride flag, the lesbian pride flag, the gay men pride flag, the aromantic pride flag. I don't even know what that is. The non-binary pride flag, the asexual pride flag, and the bisexual pride flag. Now, here's the interesting thing about this app is that you cannot have interaction with other people, but your bird does, right? This bird called Finch does. And so the business aspect of the bird, it basically has them traveling and they carry something with them. So somebody has to actually buy these flags. I was telling Randall, you guys know Randall, my husband, I was telling him, I said, I'm going to cancel my subscription to this just because they did this 13. So I know, Stephen, it sounds kind of silly, but I have to tell you, there are millions of people that use this app. And I mean, as cute as it is, doesn't it look cute that, you could dress up your little finch and have them hold a little flag? And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So anyway, everybody, I just say that because look, part of my calling is to tell you the truth about what's going on, right? And one of the things that isn't being said these days is that homosexuality is a sin. You're not hearing it from the pulpit very often. You're not looking at what causes homosexuality. We're not looking at how the American Psychological Association is a political arm of the gay activist movement. So on, and so on. And so Stephen, he's the former homosexual, right? God has healed him of those desires. And there are so many others out there, but nobody ever hears about it because nobody talks about it. So anyway, I want to welcome you back. It's been a minute since we've talked, but I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, it's been a while. So thank you.
What do you think of that? The app? I know you didn't expect me to start with that, but...
No. It's indicative of what we are dealing with culturally in all the Western nations of the world. There is a normalization of that which God has, clearly revealed in the scripture. I mean, it only takes about a fifth grade education to read that there is a condemnation of homosexual behavior. And they have taken this type of behavior, I'm talking about the HRC, the political activists, and even as you mentioned, the American Psychological Association, and these organizations that empower sexual deviancy as normative. And so they have done this, and they're doing it at a level that we have never seen before. And that is the communication around the human rights campaign and those that are political activists have communicated since the last 2 years have been shut down with gay pride and the need to really endorse and push forward pride. This year, 2022, is going to be one of the greatest times. In other words, they're saying the most outrageous, and it has been actually, and it continues to grow. And there's even more planned. People are paying attention to what's going to happen in the next 15 days. It's pretty outrageous, all right, and it's tailored towards children. Yep. And you cannot escape it. I mean, when you have drag queen story hours on almost every major city in bars for children, and it's just across the nation, you have every outlet of cartoon, the Cartoon Network, Fisher Price, you have Nickelodeon, Sesame Street, you have all of these different companies, Disney, that are promoting the idea of the normalization of LGBTQ. So you start out with an app. Well, that app is indicative of everything in social media and totally using applications and software.
Does it drive you crazy? Because it drives me crazy. First of all, a lot of kids use this app. I've seen them in the message boards and stuff. But does it drive you crazy that there are people just now actually waking up to like the whole Disney thing?
I mean, it really does. I mean, it's just like, we're 20 years into this, right?
Right.
Of actually sounding the alarm that this is really going to get bad. We knew it would probably get bad in the 90s, but when the Obama administration did what they did, especially the last 15 years, it should have been very, very clear that we have a big problem headed towards our children. And sure enough, it is just continued to multiply. And they're not saying this in the news much, but the rate of sex trafficking and the assault on children is growing in leaps and bounds.
Oh, yeah. I don't have any. I actually got, I'm a member of the American Association of Christian Counselors, and am working on my certification to be a coach, even though I have my master's in the field. And I actually just got an email from them talking about the incidences of suicide among the youth going skyrocket. And you know what? And that's something too. I know, part of the reason I wanted to have you on is, first of all, it's been a long time. It's been a while, even though we've talked and we both have a life, But I will say you started God's Voice, right? Was it you that started this?
Yeah. First Stone has been the hosting 501c ministry organization to legally host God's Voice Conference. And God's Voice Conference is a response, honestly, to the poor theology, but also to the culture of Revoice and the deceptiveness and the leaven that has come into the church, but also the culture. It was actually, if the truth be known, it was a brainstorm of Janet Medford just asking me and some other leaders questions. What should we do? What can we do? And so we ended up having some meetings, and we decided to develop this conference.
Yeah, and I want all you guys out there to know, look, I happen to be a couple of pretty well-known apologist groups, and there are people in these groups who are coming in and they're constantly talking about homosexuality. And I will say there was a man that came into one of the groups under the forum. This is a paid platform I'm in. and he's gay, clears, flat out. And he said he left and all this other stuff. I did some background on him. Did some background, followed around, looked at his Goodreads account, looked at his Twitter, and saw this guy's nothing but an activist. And I warned the director of the platform I was in. But Stephen, the thing that bothers me is all these people in this apologetics forum who were trying to find answers at how do you address this. Everybody that they cited for a source was from the liberal faction, whether it was Matthew Vines or any of these other people. And I kept citing you. In fact, this guy was located in Oklahoma. I said, go to First Stone, look at Stephen Black, look at Ann Polk, look at the Restored Hope Network. And nobody had heard of these people. Which was annoying to me. And I'm like, okay. So, Rosaria Butterfield, she was mentioned quite a bit. And yes, she has a great testimony, but she's kind of a little off on the whole reparative therapy thing, right?
Well, she ironically has contacted me and other leaders. And she has recently actually very humbly apologized. And so I'm very excited to see what's happening in Rosaria's life. I am actually scheduled to have a meeting with her soon.
Nice.
And to actually process that. So from the correspondence already, I would say it's exciting that she is actually embracing a very clear biblical worldview that's going, we have this document called The Differing Views. Right. And I've always said of Rosaria, out of anybody that was in column 3, she would be the one I would think that would go to column 4. Because something I noticed about her is she had such a love for God's word. And it's hard to have a love for truth and not be humble enough to admit when you've been wrong concerning truth. And she's the only one. And I've seen some of the ones in column 3 now go to column 2, which is very disconcerting because they're embracing gay Christianity. But that's a little update on that. That's exciting for you to know.
That is exciting. Okay, so that's good news. I feel good about that. I also want to let people know, this sheet that we're going to offer this, right? We're going to give this sheet away to people who want that list, because if you guys don't understand that these big people, the names that are out there that are being pushed, they don't, a little leaven, right? They don't do this, which is why God's Voice, I love Janet Mefford. I met her at an NRB conference, and she's a little tiger. Yeah. But she emceed your event, right? Or she led the panels and stuff.
Yeah. And we had split in 2020 because of COVID.
Right.
And then we still weren't able to do it in 2021. So we were able to get it done this year.
So, all right. So Peter LaBarbera was there, he gave a great presentation and all that. So talk a little bit about what you guys hope to do with this, because you put it online, and I'm thankful you did, because
all the sessions are online. Really, it's a wake-up call to understand some of the history behind transgenderism and the activism that is taking place at the level of Revoice, the gay Christian movement, but also culturally. And so I opened the conference with a video that is a montage of everything happening culturally. But then I quickly moved back to, now we can clearly, as Christians, you can see that most of this is really shocking and really wrong, especially the cartoons. When people see the latter half of that video and they see all of the cartoons directed towards children, that should be very alarming. But what's, to me, more alarming is what Michael Perkins and myself and others have been doing the homework on Revoice and their ideology, and what has permeated the church in the highest levels of evangelical circles of the PhDs, the Gospel Coalition, the Southern Baptists, the PCA, the Assembly of God. Yep. When you start looking at what is supposed to be strong Bible-believing people, and they've made a segue, a pathway towards gay Christianity, it should be very disturbing. And so the conference really shared a lot of light on that. We also had Scott Lively, who's probably, honestly, one of the most persecuted men ever on this issue and exposing the twisted governmental policies and powers of the LGBTQ and some of the history that goes back to even the Nazis. And so a lot of people hate that man. I actually love him.
Oh.
And I loved having MD Perkins here, who helped produce the movie that Laura Beth Perry, now Laura Beth Smaltz, and myself were in a couple of years ago. It broke in October of 2021. It's called In His Image. Well, Michael Perkins, from that event and from the 3 years of producing that, started studying Revoice. And from that, there's now 2 books. One's called A Little Leaven, Understanding the Revoice Ideology, and a new book that's getting ready to come out this month called Dangerous Affirmations. And I wrote the foreword in it. And so Michael came and did a presentation, very, very powerful. And then one of my favorite people to disclose the history on transgenderism is Dr. Quentin Van Meter. And he was there in Johns Hopkins when they started even developing the idea as a young man. And so he knows all these players, and he knows that it's not based in real science, it's based on political ideology. And so exposing all of that, we feel like is a good offering to the church and to those who love truth.
Amen. Well, it's great. I mean, you mentioned Scott. I've had Scott on our show, and those of you who don't know Scott Lively, he was persecuted, vilified. He was told that he had committed crimes against humanity when he went to Uganda to help AIDS victims, and people out there. And they dragged him through the mud, and he won. He's an attorney. His testimony is very powerful. He used to be homeless. He became a Christian, went to law school, got saved, became a reverend, like you are, and now he actually does a YouTube show too. He has his stuff is great though. He's written the pink swastika among other things. So definitely a thing. And then the doctor, that was my first exposure to the doctor. So that was kind of cool too.
Yeah, he gives some thorough history that I think people are honestly, they're dumbfounded by. And then, of course, Peter LaBarbera, who has been an investigative reporter by trade for years. And Peter brings, some of the pieces of the truth that expose things about gay culture and gay subculture that most people don't even know that's going on. I mean, I learned something yesterday that is absolutely disgusting at a level. They are now the gay community, these rough and tough gay men, they're wanting to now have this thing called, it's MMA boxing, but it's called Fight and F. And the F is fornication under carnal knowledge, that acronym. And so it's they're actually wanting for men to compete, to actually beat the hell out of one another, and then to have sex in the cage in front of audiences. This is like going back to worse than the gladiator days.
Yeah,
and it's a level of perversion we have never seen, and so you've got that going on, and at the same time normalizing it to the most innocence of minds, to pre-kindergarten children, that this is normal.
Yeah, and you know what though? Romans 1. I mean, it's Romans 1, and I hate to say it, but one of the things that nobody talks about, and as I'm glad you brought Peter up, was that when you look at some of the big name people who are out there, they've all had histories of abuse.
Right.
It's if my audience knows that I thought I was gay at one point because I was sexually abused and I struggled with this and I went to therapy and within a few sessions, I understood, because I knew biblically it was wrong, but within a few sessions of having a therapist kind of help me work through this before the field was completely corrupted, God was really merciful, but, his word is what healed me. In fact, I saw an article put out by the State of the Bible people a couple of days ago saying that those people who are Bible engaged, who read it, who've been victims of trauma, have a higher, happiest incident rate, and their life is overall better than those who don't ever read the Bible. So if you take a traumatized person, you get God's word into them to heal them, they're better off than somebody who's never been traumatized and is a heathen. I mean, that's the power of God's word. You can be completely, and the trauma they're talking about isn't like, I stubbed my fingernail. No, it's abuse. It's murder. It's killing. It's serious trauma, which I've been a victim of. But I went to therapy. I got help. God directed me to the right people to help. And, when Peter was talking about some of the backstories of Don Lemon and some of the other people out there, they write about this. This is the thing that drives me nuts. They'll write about their abuse, but nobody ever addresses that aspect. I mean, way back in the olden days, Dr. Dobson tried to bring it up, attachment issues. Walt Heyer, as you know, he's one of the few people who, when he came out of his transgender issue, talked about the comorbid disorders of depression and anxiety. Well, the comorbid disorders should be the primary issue that people are dealing with, the underlying cause of what causes that.
That's exactly right.
So in your work as a pastoral counselor, tell me a little bit how you minister to the men. I'm assuming that you work primarily with men who struggle with this issue. What would you say is the percentage of the men who's been abused that you work with?
Well, we do have those numbers, actually. And John Hopkins did the Atlantis Journal, and we have some pretty hard numbers of evidence that more than 65% of males and 85% of females were sexually abused pre-pubescent. And now, what was interesting with the survey that we conducted for Freedom Realized, the book, we have what's called the First Stone Ministries Effectiveness Survey of taking 25 years of client folders. And in that survey, the first 10 years, the numbers were up in their 60s, like what we would normally see. But they went down the last 15 years, what I thought was interesting. And so we ended up with around 58%. And the reason I believe it went down is because technology. We have these, and children don't need to be sexually molested. They can be sexually maligned with sexual distortion, which in that same survey, we found out that it was high 90, I want to say 97% of the people that we have ministered to had some form of what we call sexual distortion. So that would be inappropriate sexual graphic sex talk, pornography, exhibitionism, voyeurism, prepubescent. Of everyone that struggled with homosexuality, high 90% of these people have been exposed. And so there's a robbing of innocence that is so clear-cut, it's so true. And people need to realize just how dark this really is. And now we've got the National Education Association and all of the public schools that are normalizing this all the way down to kindergarten. And there's an actual human rights campaign move to do this. And they even have what's called a faith-based initiative to infiltrate the church. So this normalization goes hand in hand with an attack on children, and children have been sexually abused, high levels, prepubescent. And then when you get post-pubescent, the numbers go up even higher. So, when people go into puberty, especially in the culture that we're in, they are now promoting and I have to tell you, Stacy, about something that just happened. I had a family in my office in January, and they're from rural Oklahoma. And the brother, there were two sons, and the mom and dad, and one brother was here with the other brother to help the brother who wanted to leave homosexuality. And the one brother was, he's a cattleman, he's very masculine wrestler on the football team, and so 3 hours into the meeting, which was a very long meeting.
Wow.
The brother had confessed all of his sin and found out that there had been some really terrible sexual abuses and rape. And then the other brother, who's supposed to be, ever straight, he says, Mom and Dad, I need to confess something. You're going to be shocked, but it's the truth. He said, everyone I know on the football team, on the wrestling team, every guy I know in college, in high school, in our high school, this is a rural high school in Oklahoma. We're talking bleeding red state, right? Conservatism. And he said, everyone I know is at least trying out friends with benefits. In other words, a homosexual act. And so then I asked the question, I said, wait, so are you telling me everyone you know in high school has at least had some homosexual activity? And he said, yes, everyone I know. And so this is what's going on in our school systems. It's not being talked about.
No.
And so the level of normalization of non-binary, being queer meaning you're just kind of, feeling it out, checking it out, and all things go. And you may not want to be gay or lesbian, but at least try out gay sex. This is what's being promoted. It's so evil, because I know and you know that when you cross that line and you engage in that kind of behavior, it leaves you very scarred. And as human beings, or sexual beings, that is going to leave an inroad for demonic activity and always questioning, because maybe it felt good. And this is the nature of sin. Just because sin feels good doesn't make it normalized in a person's identity. But that's exactly what's happening in the culture now.
Yeah. I that's just it's so horrible. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1986, which is making me feel really old right now. But when I went to my high school, there were no bars around it.
Right.
But now there are, there's a fence. It looks like a prison, and, Randall and I, 20 years ago, we went to the GLSEN Conference for the first time as spies. And, I remember just what they were promoting then. And then I had the blessing, if you will, of going to the counseling conferences. I worked as a school therapist for 3 years at California Elementary School. So I know, and I've been jumping up and down for 20 years almost, trying to scream and let people know about this. But what the Lord laid on my heart a couple of days ago as I was praying through this stuff. And that was that our culture and the church advocate avoidance, right? We advocate for avoiding the important stuff. We completely advocate for it. We don't want to deal with the truth. And it drives me crazy because, I'm a childless woman. I don't have children, but you know what? I know a lot of women that do, who have grandchildren. I'm old enough to be a grandma. I recently published my book, Pickleball Faith, which a lot of people are laughing about the title, but I will tell you what, pickleball is a mission field. And I talk to women there all the time who have struggles with kids, grandkids that have these issues. It's like, well, what do you do? The whole Disney thing, just as an example, my younger brother, who, bless his heart, I saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he says to me, yeah, I canceled Disney because of what they're doing. And I'm like, glad you finally woke up, Do you know what your sister does by any chance here? It's like, and I said this on Facebook, you know what? I don't care if people cancel Disney during the boycott, because when the summer comes out, next thing you know, they're going to send their kids to the movie because they're going to go, oh my gosh, it's a new Disney movie. And they're not going to care that the kiss is there or anything. But it is not surprising to me, given that I've read After the Ball and studied the book, that the advocacy is going right for the church. And in the God's Voice thing, one of the things you guys talked about was how their ultimate goal is to silence Christians. The Equality Act. Talk a little bit about that, because I don't think a lot of people understand the power of that. But before you do, I just want to take a little break here and, let everybody know, hey, if you like what we do, if you're new to this, then, just know this is one of the topics we talk about. In the past, some people, people are why should we take her seriously? Well, you know what? I have a good sense of humor, for one. And number two, I know what I'm talking about. And I have to sometimes do things with a light touch because things are so heavy, they're just heartbreaking, right? So Heart Tongue International, that's the place to go. Donate to us, support what we do. And you'll get the truth, right? Just go ahead, sign up for our email, and I will send you stuff when I send out email. And you'll read it. Yeah, you will, because I'll look at the click-through rate. You'll click it, and then you'll read what I send you. And you'll get good stuff like this. So you'll learn about the Equality Act. So Stephen, tell me more about what's going on with that, because I think that's like one of the coffin, the nails, and nobody is talking about it. I haven't heard my pastor talk about it. I haven't heard, well, I don't listen to a lot of radio, but, I really haven't heard a lot of people talk about it.
Well, they're not, and the problem has been is there's been so many other salacious stories, and then you had the pandemic, and then you have, what's going on with all these other things that people like about entertainment. So that fills the news. But, Johnny Depp's more about what in people's living rooms than something that would actually fundamentally change America for good. And if people do not understand this, they need to look to the neighbors to the north. They've already passed a law in Canada that makes what I do a criminal felony up to 5 years in prison based upon this same mentality. What this is the Equality Act, H.R. 5. It's already passed the House. It's already been signed as an executive order by President Biden, his first week of office, to force all federal employees and federal institutions to bow down that LGBTQ, and they have included the plus sign. So in other words, any form of sexual behavior that is outside what would be normative of what is innate, what is, in other words, biology, heterosexuality, anything outside of that now gets a civil rights editing of the 1964 civil rights status to make these behaviors equal to race and gender. So how does that affect us? The ramifications are so far-reaching that it would change banking. See, people aren't thinking about their money. Right. That's where people need to start thinking about, because it will change banking. It will change retirement funds. It will change insurance. In other words, there can be non-discriminatory processes of these accounts or organizations connected to these accounts, like the church or like a 501c3. So this has already happened in England. People say, oh, that won't happen. It already has happened. It happened to Michael Davidson, where they took his banking account away because they called him a hate group. And so then it will have on all of employment, housing, all institutions of education, all institutions of faith. They will demand that any 501c3 or church that proclaims a belief system must bow down to this belief system. So yours truly, with 6 other plaintiffs, we are suing the president and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in presenting the Equality Act because it's unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has already ruled that secular humanism is a religion and cannot be the state religion. Well, anybody that takes any time at all to investigate LGBTQ plus sign behavior knows that it's based upon feelings, desires, and faith. It is not based upon hard science. The science is actually on our side.
Right.
And so XY cannot change to an XX, and an XX cannot change to an XY. In other words, transgenderism is faith-based secular humanism. And so we do have a constitutional Trump-appointed judge hearing our case. And so that's very good news. This could set a precedent in the United States to really put the brakes on the Equality Act. But if it were to pass tomorrow, we as Christians would be in a world of hurt within 24 hours.
So any size nonprofit or just the ones over 100?
Yeah, I don't know that there is a stipulation on that.
So that's serious. And of course, nobody is talking about that. So, and you know what I always say? First of all, I think you guys are brave for doing what you're doing. Have you been threatened yet?
We're getting ready to do a press release, and I'm sure we will. But locally, we have ironically, a group of what they call themselves the most loving and enduring people, the Mama Bears.
Oh.
So you've got the Mama Bears, a lady heading this up. Her name is Sarah Cunningham, and her group really of kind of thuggish, very bullying women. And they've done some things, and they've made their voices known. That First Stone, because we're here locally in Oklahoma City with their group, that we are an evil hate group. See, this is why, you asked the question about, well, does that mean less than 100? See how they will go at this, and they'll even go after individuals. If you're a discriminatory, hate, homophobic bigot, you're going to be attacked.
Right.
And they're going to do it as little as one pastor or, a church staff of, 500. It's going to be prolific in the way of the LGBTQ mindset, because this is their mindset. And it's almost drummed up, and they'll even get people into a frenzy over this idea of someone being a hate monger. And if you're a hater, and you're homophobic, then you're fair game. And so this group, along with another group called the Hate Trackers, the Hate Trackers, of course, they got busted and they got criminal felonies, so they're kind of removed for the while. But they've actually said, someone like myself, Sally Kern, and Paul Blair, that people like us should be dead. And they don't come out and say, kill us, but they make statements like, these are the most dangerous people in Oklahoma. So we have had that kind of stuff go on, and it continues.
Yeah. And for those of you out there who have never been inside the gay activist world, I mean, I actually had to testify against a pretty prominent gay activist a while back because of something that I did with a friend of mine legally. And I would tell you, they are vicious. They are. And therein is part of our problem, because on the one hand, you and I see the viciousness of this movement, right?
Right.
But then on the other hand, there's like two or three categories. There's the abused person that, they just think this is the greatest thing, and they embraced who they are, and they're deceived big time. But then you got the hardened Roman ones, where they're, and I would say Randy Thomas is one of those at this point, and it is tragic to me.
He's become an enemy of the cross.
Oh, totally. And it's tragic though, because they're lying to people, and it especially drives me crazy when I look at the, there's video, I saw yesterday, and today is June 15th, for those of you who care. So when I'm recording this, but June 15th, okay, so I saw a couple stories. I saw there was a homosexual pastor who was praying and this horrible thing down in Fresno, and there was a city councilman who stood up against it, which was awesome. I was like, wow, in Fresno, and the guy is a retired clinical psychologist too. And then there were some baseball players recently who decided that they were not going to put the gay pride flag on their uniform, and they got flack in the media for it. And it's like, you think that this isn't touching everybody, but the one thing that really drove me crazy was the Congress guy. He actually pointed out on Twitter the gay pride parade where the drag queen guy was talking about lube and all this other stuff, and they pan over and there's little children standing right there. Now, I don't know about you people, but children don't need to be around freaks like that in the first place, okay? And I'm trying to be gracious here, but let's call it for what it is, all right? It's deviance on steroids.
There's a lot of mental illness involved in the whole drag queen world and transgenderism.
But I mean, when I went to the GLSEN Conference 20 years ago, they gave out condoms, okay? They were giving out condoms 20 years ago at this GLSEN Conference where there were teenagers at it, and I remember going back to my church. I won't call out the stupid pastor that I had at the time because the guy was a jerk. But I went back to that church and I told them what was going on, and this idiot guy don't care about it. Really? Okay, so now you have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and your grandchildren now have to do this. I actually was talking to somebody at pickleball a couple of days ago, a couple who is raising their children in the homeschool. They're kind of, I don't know what their denomination is, but they actually told me, they said, yeah, we're going to go down to the Renaissance Festival here in Nashville in this area to check it out because they wanted to see if it was going to be safe enough to bring their kids to it first. I mean, it's completely insane. And yet we're the bad guys for calling it out, And yet I can tell you, as a survivor of decades of sexual abuse, that, what, if it wasn't for the redemptive power of Christ coming in my life and him giving me the wisdom to pursue good, healthy therapy, I could have gone down that route and just abused myself over and over and over again. And I go back to, I talk about this all the time when they put the plus sign. That means pedophilia, bestiality, and you name every other.
Yeah, it's redefining pedophilia, MAPS and YAPS. So
yeah.
Minor attracted person and youth attracted person. So you have a new subset of prepubescent attraction and postpubescent attraction, normalized by the APA.
I did not know about the YAPs. Oh my gosh. That is okay. So you guys out there, if you don't know, there's a website called BeforeUack.org. It's the letter B, the letter U, the number 4, the word act.org. If you go there, I think they've probably hidden some of the stuff now. Because a long time ago, Matt Barber and Judith Reisman, who is the expert on Kinsey, who's no longer with us, I heard, which I didn't know. But, they exposed this. What they originally were doing was, this was the convoluted way they went about it, was they're like, okay, as a same-sex attracted person, I have depression and I can't get therapy because no, I take that back. As a child attracted person, that's what I meant to say. I am depressed and I want to get therapy, but I know that if I go in and say I like children sexually, I'm going to be persecuted and nobody in the mental health field will see me. Well, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders has gone way off rails in the last couple of years. Anyway,
the last 5 edits were all about politics.
Yeah, well, but anyway, the whole reasoning though they gave is that okay, well, we're going to feel sorry for the pedophiles, so we want them to get counseling for their depression. And the irony is, I'm a trained therapist, right? So I had my father-in-law come in because he was a pedophile, and he just wanted to deal with his depression, but he didn't give a crap that he raped his sister, his daughters rather. It's like, oh, it's okay. I feel good about that. Okay. But can you help me with my depression? So they lied. They took the Kinsey 10%. They actually said this at one point. I don't know if they still hold to it, that pedophiles are born that way. Right. Which is such a load of, you know what? It's like, So, sometimes knowledge is too much, with much wisdom comes vexation, right, Stephen? It's like,
There's a grief with it. When you find out some of this stuff, it's grievous. And so, when you or I or someone in the know starts communicating loudly how bad this is, it's shocking to some people. They're just like, oh, this can't be. And we're like over here, no, we've known this to be true for years, and we deal with the sorrow of it.
Well, and it's funny too, but I often, I have to be honest and say that, when I post things on Facebook or social media, or even on my own website, I wonder what people think of me. I have friends in a whole bunch of different areas. I can talk about pickleball. That's fine. Oh, it's an innocent thing. Right. But if I bring up, I'm opposed to homosexual Pride Month, I might have 2 or 3 comments, but nobody will publicly come out and support me. I actually have, I've been teaching Bible studies and host a couple of those, week, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. And I have a lady who's in her 70s who just started coming to my thing. She just got saved recently. And she was like, you know what? I don't have any time to deal with all this other stuff. I got to get to know the word. And I'm like, okay, we can do that. But at the same time, I'm like, these other people, it's almost like they're gobbling up prophecy news. They like the salacious, I can't say the word. They like the tantalizing aspect of this, but they don't want to do anything about it. They can't even say it's wrong. And as I've told people before, when I interviewed the current pastor that I sit under in my Baptist church, which is going down, the Southern Baptist Convention they just rejected Vody Bachman as the head, the most conservative candidate there, right? So anyway, but when I interviewed my pastor about this, I was like, well, before I become a member of this church, this is my issue. Are you going to be able to stand up against the gay lobby when they come to the church? Because they will. Just like Islam will. Nobody's talking about that either.
Right.
And the irony is that Islam condemns homosexuality like we do. And yet, hello, let's be Rick Warren and anyway, we won't go there. But anyway, it drives me crazy. So, because it's like, okay, look, I'm not the bad one. I am not the bad one by telling you this news. I'm trying to help you expose the truth because we have this book here that I think is the best-selling it's the #1 best-selling book in the world.
Right.
But nobody reads it. Except those of us who do read it, then we're like, hey, did you know that it says here in this? So I don't know. I'm glad we're on the same time, though. We'll go to jail together, right?
It really is a possibility. I wondered at one time early on if it would happen in my lifetime. Now it's like, oh, it's going to happen in the next 10 years.
Oh, their goal. Yeah, for sure.
It's going to happen.
Well, Peter LaBarber's already been in prison up and he went to jail in Canada.
Right. Yeah. And anybody, that is anybody who really wants to make a difference or proclaim truth. There's so many people that actually do believe like we believe, but they're silent. And it only takes, like Bonhoeffer said, it only takes, a lot of good even Bible believing people to remain silent for evil men to triumph. And that's what's happening. You've got this evil triumphing because people are being silent. And we can be silent no more on these issues if we want to make a change. And the problem is I don't know that that the change can happen fast enough to really recapture the greatness of the nation that we call home and that we love. I love America. And so, it's sad. And now, that's one thing, the culture, but the church now, and what's happening in the church. And if we don't get some bold, courageous men of God to say enough is enough, we're going to be in a world of hurt in the church. We'll be scattered. So, that means the foretold persecution, and it will bring purifying, and God is in control. And so I trust him with all of this. But that's why we still do things like God's voice while we can, is to maybe, stay back some of this push of evil, because that's what salt and light does, is it wants to kind of stop this evil from triumphing. And so, that's why your listeners and you and myself, we need to continue to be proactive. We need to keep speaking the truth in love. Now, some people would say, like, I've got a meeting coming up. He doesn't like my presentation. He doesn't like the way I present. I'm like, well, that's one thing. You don't like my personality. But I think part of the problem is you don't like my personality in boldly proclaiming the truth. And the problem is with that is what's working.
Right.
And the reality is bold truth, bold love, really loving is going to proclaim the truth boldly. And, you don't say in passive tones, fire, when the house is on fire. You scream it. And I loved what the fireman jumped up in a conference I was at. And he said, sir, not only I'm a fireman, and not only do we scream fire, we take the axe to the front door and to the windows, and we bash it open to get the people out. And, you've got, the very passive people over here saying, I don't like the way you present, Stephen Black. It's too bold. It's too loud. And I just don't like it. Well, I'm going, okay, take the truth, like Jesus said, like King David said, if the messenger is speaking the truth, at least take the truth and do something with it. Yeah. Don't negate the truth.
We can't win. I mean, I can't win. People don't like you because of how you are. People don't like me because of how I am. It's like, I talk to...
You're super sweet. You're so sweet in your delivery. I'm like, yes, we need the mercy, kindness of God.
It's so
people hate that too.
Well, I think what it is I think that some people don't see that my humor it's disarming to some people. I can get away with saying a whole lot just because of my personality.
Even disarming for you. Otherwise, you might be crying.
I cry a lot too. I wanted to end though. I'm taking this biblical citizenship class. I actually posted this over on Facebook, but this quote from Noah Webster, I think is really good. It says here, all the miseries and evils which men suffer from vice, crime, ambition, injustice, oppression, slavery, and war proceed from their despising or neglecting the precepts contained in the Bible.
So good.
Randall, you should put this up on the screen because it's so true. It's so true. And, I think people, you forget that Jesus is truth, right? And, I'm not one of these people that jumps up and down and I really care about saving America. I'm not going to say I used to be,
right,
but I'm more passionate about making disciples because I know if I can make a disciple, then America will change.
That's right.
And that's the problem. The problem is And I actually saw this, I get news alerts on the Word Bible, and I saw this quote about this guy wrote an article about how the Bible is so great. He was a Democrat, and it was very conservative, clearly. And I left him a comment. I said, I want to thank you for writing this, because people forget that the Bible is still the number one sold book in the world. It's also the number one freely given book in the world. But here's the thing. It's a book that if you hide it in your heart, it will change your life. So that's what we do here at Bible News Radio. That's what Stephen does at his ministry, First Stone. Tell him your website and stuff.
Yeah, firststone.org, like all spelled out, firststone.org, and then stephenblack.org. That's how you can get a hold of me.
With a PHEN, just so you guys know on the podcast. Okay.
Like the Bible guy.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for watching. Don't forget, just go over to hearttug.org, join my email list if you want to donate to us. That would be awesome. Do what God tells you to. See, that's part of the problem. If you don't do what God tells you, you're in trouble. But if you do what he tells you, then we all win. So we'll see you on the next episode of the show. Make sure you share it out, and we will talk to you next time.